Has NASCAR silly season already begun? No, we're not talking about last Saturday in Martinsville, but we will talk about that later. Yeah, is the sport turning into the silo? What's big about Kyle Larson's double coming up? And we're going to talk a little bit more about Darlington as we head to the Lady of Black here, all on 5 to go. And in honor of Captain Hurd's birthday, we fire up that hot rod Lincoln. Everybody, welcome to another spectacular new episode of the 5 to Go Racing Podcast, episode 307 here on GoPRN.com, on Apple, on Spotify. You can watch it on Spotify too. And of course, you can watch it on my YouTube channel. The my in that sentence is me, Doug Fireball Turnbull, from the announcing team at the Performance Racing Network. Glad to be on with you here. And I'm glad to have all three of us back. It's been a hot minute since we've had the master maker of speed, the guy that grinds those gears in the Dawsonville garage, Dan Elliott. Dan, you've been through it in the last little bit, but we're so glad to have you back, sir. I hope you're feeling okay.
Feeling okay. Yep, had to have a little chassis work done. I thought all the perils of pit road were over, and come to find out, I had to have a little bit more work. That last pit road deal in 1990 did a lot of damage that took years really to rear its ugly head. But I knew I'd have to have some more work done as far as vertebrae and stuff, and finally got that taken care of. So hopefully we're on the mend and all is good.
Well, for sure. And let's make sure people are clear about that. You were on the number 9 Melling pit crew for Bill Elliott, the driver, in 1990. And you're talking about the Atlanta Motor Speedway crash that was more than just painful, but also tragic, right?
It was and the one where we had gotten hit before at Riverside in 87. That was two of the darkest days of my career, really, and especially on pit road. I was very blessed, very fortunate to come out as good as I came out.
Yeah.
And I'll put it respectfully in how good I came out, because that could have been a life-ending day on either day.
Well, for sure. And that was, of course, and I know it's a big deal. It's November 18th, 1990, the Atlanta Journal 500. And Ricky Rudd crashed into the car during a pit stop there, and rear tire changer Mike Rich, who posthumously got put into the Georgia Racing Hall of Fame, was killed in that incident there, Dan. And I know you got into the Hall of Fame in Georgia here in 2018, and you have said ever since it opened, there needs to be more done to honor the pit crew guys. And I know you were happy to see a few years later Mike Rich going in.
Absolutely, because I think that I always said from day one that the pit crews should have been put in collectively together as a complete pit crew.
Yeah.
And all of those members put in at the same time. And we had several people during that time that were on the same pit crews as you progress through the years, because there were things that people came and go, and accidents happen, and you had different people. But some of those people were still on the pit crew later. But it came down to each one of those pit crews collectively should have gotten recognition that they deserve, because that deal when there was no speed limit on pit road was absolutely I don't know that anyone can describe. You just need to go out there with a camera and have the camera pointing toward the field as it's coming in on a green flag pit stop, even under caution, where you've got so many cars coming down pit road and was no speed limit. So Daytona and Talladega was absolutely mind-blowing at the speeds that either they passed you at coming into pit road, or they passed you at leaving pit road.
Yeah, that's incredible there. Devin, just you being so I've always followed NASCAR in a world with pit road speed limits. All right. And let's bring in, I didn't introduce Devin properly. All right. He, of course, is the roving racing journo and our multimedia enthusiast who got to cover NCAA basketball this past weekend here in Atlanta, helping out with the media team. We'll talk about that in a moment. Devin Kupka, hope you're well today, man. And I got to ask, you think about all the safety elements. Like the first year I followed NASCAR, Devin, it was a Ricky Rudd crew member that got hit that caused them to even need helmets on pit road, 2001. All right. The Ricky Road accident with Dan Elliott's crew back in 1990, the number 9 team that killed Mike Rich, helped institute pit road speed limits eventually. Can you imagine? Oh, I don't know, Chris Wright, Devin, going down pit road at 100 plus miles an hour during live pit stops.
Yeah, no, I think it's crazy of what used to happen back in the day where there wasn't a speed limit on pit road because you see some of these clips and cars are flying by. I saw a clip not too long ago. I think it was at Talladega, and Bill Elliott was getting a pit stop, but these cars would go flying by on pit road, which I just thought was absolutely crazy to
Yeah.
see. And going back to your first year, we're really with NASCAR. Going back to mine in 17, Danica Patrick and Eric Almirola at Kansas Speedway. Remember,
Yeah, where he
I
broke his
forget who
back.
got on top of who, but Eric Almirola
Yeah,
was hurt for a
she
couple
she
races.
she couldn't stop and ran up under his car, and it knocked him diagonal, basically. Yeah. That was crazy. So that happened in your first year too. And I don't know what safety element came out of that necessarily, but think about it. The cars hadn't been developed the way they are. He could have been in a lot worse shape, Almirola, there. And that of course opened the door for Bubba Wallace's Cup debut. He had a couple race stint there
Mm-hmm.
for the Richard Petty Motorsports team, which then led to him being full-time the next season when Almirola went to Stewart Haas. Now, all right, so Dev, before we get to the rest of the show here, we're welcoming Dan back. We somehow survived without him. We also somehow managed, instead of having like 33% less words in the show, I think I did most of the hard work here and filling in with verboseness. All right. I don't think that's a word, but with loquaciousness, but we managed to get by without him there and have similar amounts of content anyway. But Dev, this past weekend, you got to actually work for the I guess a Sweet 16 that was here in Georgia, right?
Yeah, Sweet
Yeah.
16 and Elite 8.
Yeah.
So I was a part of working technically for Georgia Tech in a way, but because they were the host institution for the Elite
Yeah.
8 and Sweet 16 at State Farm Arena. But Atlanta was serving host to the South Regional for March Madness. So I got to work that. I got the banner over here, Final Four, or it's
Come
not a
on.
banner. It's actually a bench towel. I got the basketball
Okay.
behind here too,
Okay.
right there. And here, let me show a picture to everybody on
Please
here real
do.
quick.
Please do.
So
Respond right here. This is an
exactly.
audio medium for most of you, but for the few of you that watch on YouTube there, and we're thankful for you. Look at that. Murderer's Row, son. Murderer's Bro.
What am I doing with the mouse? There we go. There we are. So this is Friday night. I was courtside Friday night. Or not courtside, but I was courtside.
Yeah.
So I was running for radio. I was doing Auburn and Michigan State radio that night, running stats to them. So it was really cool to get a view of good seats basically throughout the game. So getting to see it in one of those bench areas over here.
And explain who's to your right, okay? Because these are guys working with, but why should race fans care about the person to your right, to the left of you in the photo?
Let's get to I'll get to the other people first. So to the left of me is Wyatt. There's Sam Edwards. There's Isaac Palmer here on the very right of me, and then directly to the right of me is Ryan Hutchinson, Brandon Hutchinson's son, who's the general manager and president of Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Bam, there you go. So Ryan is there. He was helping do PA back at AMS, of course, during the February race weekend. Here he is working make that Elite 8 Sweet 16 duty with you, man. Very good. Congratulations to you, Dev. And, I know how important the media runners are, so to speak, when we go and cover races there, and they're bringing us out to stats and passing the microphone, all that kind of stuff. Yep. They need to get some college volunteers down to run us some radio stats in the turns at AMS. My gosh. I mean, I'm out there with nothing. Okay. In fact, I only get the top 5 on the scoring tower, which at AMS, it really doesn't matter because they're in a big pack, but it's like, I could really use, a little more information there. So come on, run me out, cold one or something. No, I can't have that on there.
And I got to moderate a press conference on Saturday. So
cool. How was that?
Richardson from Michigan State. It was kind of like a hybrid media bullpen that NASCAR does. It was like a mix of a press conference and a bullpen kind of deal.
That's cool.
But it was kind of cool.
Hey, Doug, Devin's really raising the bar on us. We're going to have to, I know I'm going to have to work harder.
Listen, Devin raises the bar on us in multiple ways. All right. He's a college student. He turned 21 2 years ago. So there is bar raising to be done both in life and in actual bars. Okay. So I think.
Would you consider him to be a free agent?
Devin, make your pitch, man. You're a free agent.
I am a free agent.
Come on.
My Jordan year.
You're in you're in your Jordan year.
Or my Bubba
Yeah,
Wallace year.
bro. Let me tell you. Yeah, yeah. If you want somebody that could do hard work for you, multimedia side, whether it's voicing stuff, play by play, running stats, whatever it is, making reports. You need to get Devin Kupka on the deal. All right. I love the content alone that you put out on social media. So
Mhm.
hire Devin, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
Yes, please.
Come on. Dev, if they want to get in touch with you, all right. I don't know what you're willing to give out or not. What's the best way if somebody wants to hire you to get in touch with you?
Uh, mm,
Oh, you shouldn't have to think about it. Come on now.
well, probably through text or call me or my email,
Well,
cupcadevin at
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is
gmail.com
the
or
answer.
LinkedIn, Devin Kupka on LinkedIn.
Devin
That too.
Kupka on LinkedIn. Devin.Kupka Instagram. The Devin, what is it? Devin underscore. What's your? You can give your
I
email
think it's
address,
Devin
right?
underscore Kupka on X, I think.
Right. It is on X. But I'm saying your email address is. I mean, you'll give that out, right? Kupka got.
Yeah, Kupka at gmail.com.
Boom. There you go. All right. Hire Devin, ladies and gentlemen, and that's the show. Nothing else to talk
Yeah.
about.
Hey,
Slow week in
maybe
racing.
what I should do, Doug, on this thing, you know how on LinkedIn it says open for work on a lot of the profiles? We'll just put it on my screen here throughout the podcast. It just says open for work.
Open for work. That's
I figure
fantastic.
that he should put on there, will work for food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Dan, you've seen Devin. He doesn't eat. So you and I would
Well,
work for
Doug,
food.
you're pretty much the same way when we do that at the track at Gresham, and you'd eat a pack of crackers, and I'm like, oh man, is that what he's living on?
Buddy, I wasn't trying to run downstairs and buy concession stand food, man. I mean, come on. It was $100 for the day, man. I had to take that home to the family, okay? So, but yeah, that's true. I was sitting there eating like a hummus and tomato sandwich at Gresham Motorsports Park because I brought my own lunch and I don't.
Or a pack of cheese crackers.
Yeah, yeah. Peanut butter crackers. Peanut butter crackers. Let's
Get
get it
better.
right. Come on. Let's peanut butter to racetrack. Not always good luck. Okay. There's a lot to dig into this weekend. So instead of starting with the negative, which was Saturday, Martinsville, the murder fest, whatever you want to call that. And it is worth talking about. We need to talk about the Cookout 400 Sunday. Denny Hamlin goes to victory lane. That shouldn't be understated because it doesn't, you don't have to love Denny Hamlin. All right. And he got some more cheers when he won, by the way, than he usually gets. It was his 55th career win. You probably heard this stat by now. 55th career win ties him with Rusty Wallace, 11th all time. In 2018, there was talk that Denny Hamlin was going to lose his ride. He just was stale. He was getting a lot of pit road speeding penalties. He wasn't winning. He had gone from winning a lot to had fallen off a little bit. I think he had a winless season interspliced in there. And then he went on. He got with Chris Gabehart and really went on a tear. All right. He's 55 wins now. His goal is to hit at least 60. Of course, his goal, he wants to win a championship, but I think each individual win, especially if he gets 60 wins, it means even more. And he takes Progressive, a brand new sponsor, after having an anchor partner in FedEx for his entire career to victory lane. And Dan, since you've been gone a while, I just want to ask you, look, it was almost a year-long winning streak for Denny Hamlin. Were you in any doubt that Denny Hamlin would go back to winning again? Because when Jimmy Johnson won his third race in 2017, he was just months removed from his 7th championship, and he never won again. And I didn't see it for 2 years later. I was still saying Jimmy Johnson's about to win. So what did you think about Denny Hamlin's win, and did you have any doubt about him in the 11 team, especially with the new crew chief, Chris Gale?
Well, I think the distractions of, and I've said it before, the distractions of what Denny is going through, being involved in, and personally attached to. You and I both know that takes away from the program.
Sure.
Anything takes away from focus.
The antitrust lawsuit and just owning another race team.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
All the things he's involved in, and especially the part where he is so vocal about so many things.
Yeah.
And you and I both know that you can. I like to hear comments about this stuff, but sometimes it gets way too deep. It goes way too long, and maybe or maybe not, whether you as a fan like it or not, gets a lot maybe too personal, and or it goes deep anyway. And is this part of the is his being vocal part of the mind games? Because I've lived through an era of the mind game stuff, and it does affect some drivers. I don't know if it affects as many as it used to, but it affects some drivers.
Sure.
And I think the organizations have raised the bar on how not to let that get to you. But I really thought that Denny was going to struggle some more, and definitely I figured this would be a good shot for him to win, but I didn't see him winning Martinsville.
Interesting. And it had been, as you probably heard, I mean, we're recording this on a Wednesday morning. You've heard the stats, and it blew me away. It's his sixth career win in Martinsville, but it had been over 10 years since he had
Yep.
won
And
at
I
his
think
own
the
track.
biggest surprise for me was the three Toyotas in the front,
Interesting. Okay. Why were you surprised by that?
because Hendrick is on that racetrack for probably the last decade
In
or
the spring
more.
race, for sure. Yeah.
And but the track as a whole, and I think that if I could get in the minds of the powers to be, I think they would love to see a top four finish for the four cars of the Hendrick organization.
It was a big story last year when William Byron won, and it was that Hendricks 300th win, 200th, whatever it was, right? You'd think we would remember it right off because it was this huge deal, and everybody was fairy tale the whole time, and they all had the Jeff Bodine colored paint scheme for the All-Star Racing deal that was a year ago when William Byron won. By the way, Byron was persona non grata Sunday. He got lapped at one point. He finished 22nd, last car on the lead lap. I didn't see, and I had to go back and watch or see highlights or whatever because I was in church during most of the race. But that was surprising to me. I mean, Chase Elliott ended up fourth up there. Oh goodness, Kyle Larson was right behind him in fifth. Alex Bowman was running okay, but he had a loose wheel at one point and had to pit and get that fixed. So he was in the back, and so was William Byron, as I said. Devin, what did you think? And we're going to go through the top 10 here and do kind of our normal stuff before really diving in on another lawsuit and diving in on Sunday, whatever that was. But Dev, what did you think about the significance of the oldest driver in the series, 44 years old, Denny Hamlin, climbing another rung up the all-time wins list?
Well, I think it was good for him to get a win in nearly almost a year now, because it's been since Dover last year,
Yep,
last time Hamlin won a
last
race,
April.
when he went on that concrete run that he had between Bristol and Dover.
See, I went on a
But
concrete run, but that was just stopping at different ice cream parlors like Culver's. Okay, that was a whole
yeah.
different thing. Yeah,
But concrete, I like that. I like the reference there. But with Denny Hamlin, though, I think it's a good win for him to go out, get a win, progress. First time Progressives really. I mean, second week that Progressives on the car, but
yeah.
getting Progressive to victory lane very early on, I think that was good, and just to add some more depth to the variety of winners. But I mean, just look at the Toyotas 1, 2, 3 there: Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, Bubba Wallace. Good day. Surprised that you didn't really see the Hendrick drivers really pan out there. I mean, Elliott and Larson did finish 4 and 5, but I mean, just looking at it, I mean, it's just a good day for Hamlin to go out and get that win. And I like the thing when he put out the thing at the end of the race. It said 11 against the world, because I'm sure that probably ticked off some race fans over the weekend.
And it was based on the Ohio State flag, Ohio State versus the world, when they went on their championship winning run over the college football season, and a fan had given him that. I think that is really cool. I don't care what it said. If it had been obscene, I would care about it. But, the fact that he used a fan's gift to him as his new mantra, and Denny Hamlin said in his post-race presser, he thrives off of, I'll edit this, crap talking. He thrives over crap talking. All right. He wants a chip. He is much like his co-owner, Michael Jordan. He needs a chip on his shoulder. By God, does he have one? I know that lawsuit's a distraction, but he's got a chip on his shoulder. Dan, I talked in front of you.
Doug, Devin, what do you think this is going to, for the rest of the season, what do you foresee out of, first, maybe Denny Hamlin and his success during the course of the year, and the organization, the 2311 as a whole?
Right. It was Denny Hamlin, of course, being with Gibbs, and then the team he owns, 2311. Go ahead, Deb.
I think it's kind of tough, and it's going to be the same narrative that we've seen pretty much every year if Hamlin makes a deep playoff run, is that, well, is it his year to win the championship? And it just hasn't panned out to be that way.
Right.
Because I feel like he can win as many races as he wants to in the regular season, or even going in early into the postseason too. But it's at the end of the day for him, I feel like it comes down to whether or not he wins that championship.
That's what other people I really think for him, as much as he wants the championship, if he piled up, I think right now, if Denny Hamlin had to choose win 9 times this season or get a championship, I honestly think he chooses the wins because he has been vocal, along with at least half of the rest of the driver corps, that a championship doesn't mean what it used to. All right. Making the championship 4 probably means more just because it's so hard, because that really is based on more of a body of work than the one championship race. And I'm not saying it, I think it does mean a lot and it would shut everyone up and he'd get the big trophy. But I really think he would rather have 9 wins and no championship than 2 wins and a championship, I think, at this point, especially because his goal is volume, getting that number of wins. All right. You're looking skeptical.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I'm trying to put this in perspective of how I would feel about it, and usually it equates to the number of wins equals the championship, and the more you get on a tire on a roll, as you said, probably. I look at Denny's morale. That's after that win. That's got to help morale. It's got to all the way across the board.
Yeah.
So, given that, I think this will give him a boost. Whether it's a short-term boost or a long-term boost will be determined. But I think ultimately, you and I both know that most everybody wants to walk away with a championship.
Sure.
And the way this is formatted now, to where that you have to remain high enough in the points to get yourself into that last 10 championship race run. But I think that they are equally important.
Well, okay, that's fair. Equally important. All right. So Denny Hamlin, the winner there. Also a big-time monkey off the back for the first win as Hamlin's crew chief for Chris Gale. Now, Gale had won with Eric Jones before. So he had won with Eric Jones. He did not win with Ty Gibbs, and they moved him over to the 11 car there. Of course, Chris Gabehart really complimented the organization because the rest of that 11 team was a team that Gabehart had put together. And, of course, Gabehart was Hamlin's crew chief from 2019 through 2024, and he is now the competition director at Joe Gibbs Racing. Seemed like that whole team, even Ty Gibbs, who had a worse finish than he deserved there, he got spun out by Tyler Reddick, and that was the radioactive clip of the week, so to speak. Tyler Reddick, Mr. Jesus, he gets us, said, "I'm going to go get that little effer after the race." Yeah. So there you go. He had Tyler Reddick, his Toyota organizational teammate, if you will. They had a little talking to a pit road after the race. Reddick got into Gibbs there, but Gibbs ended up finishing 13th. But the rest of the Gibbs barn seemed to look okay. You know, Chase Briscoe finished 9th. Christopher Bell was runner up. So I don't, I think that we're seeing Gabehart's elevation to the new role start to pay off, although Ty Gibbs had that horrid start to the year. Let's run through the top 10 real quick. So it's Toyota Trio top 3, Hamlin, Bell, Wallace. Bubba Wallace, another good day. Only walks away with 42 points, though. You'd think it'll be a couple more points considering that finish there, and he's still in the top 10 in the standings. Chase Elliott, who led some laps early, 42 of them. He finished 4th. Kyle Larson ended up 5th. 6th went to Ross Chastain. That team needed a turnaround after just a PU ugly Homestead race. Ryan Preece with his 3rd top 10 in a row. 3rd top 10 in a row for car 60. He finished 7th. 8th went to Joey Logano, his 1st top 10 of the season. Yes, Joey Logano in 6 races has more top 10s than our Atlanta Braves have wins right now, by the way, through 6 games. And 9th went to Chase Briscoe, and Todd Gilliland squeaked in there to get into the top 10. Very surprising to see Ryan Blaney only muster 11th. He started toward the back, but it was tough to pass there, and he just could never get the right track position. Now, one thing I like to see in this race, guys, is because they had a few unplanned cautions through the beginning of the race. You saw Chris Buescher crash, a couple of others. You had situations where drivers could stay out on older tires, these old soft tires, but they didn't really have enough give up, and they actually were able to keep track position. So that allowed Ryan Blaney to get from the back toward the front, but he couldn't really stay in the front there. And then going back a little further in the field, Ty Gibbs the 13th. Like I said, Tyler Reddick only 14th. This has not been his best track. And then some drivers that really darn struggled. I already mentioned William Byron. What the heck? 22nd. Okay. Chris Buescher crashed twice, including driving over the left rear of Noah Gregson, which I don't think was I don't think that was a Saturday Martinsville syndrome thing. I really think that was a misjudged how much they were slowing in front of him on an accordion and just couldn't get stopped in time thing. But still, Chris Buescher is usually flawless, and he had two big mistakes in that race, and he ended up only 24th. His team owner, Brad Keselowski, 26, guys, another bad finish for Bad Brad. Devin, I don't like to be an alarmist here, but what the heck? We talked so much about Ty Gibbs. What the heck, Brad Keselowski?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with him this season. And another poor finish for him. But it's putting him behind the eight ball very early on. And
God, yeah.
that's a team that's made the playoffs here and there over the past few years. But he needs to go out and get a win. I mean, Darlington is the only win that he's had, and that came last year. And we're at Darlington Raceway this year for Throwback Weekend. So
coming up on 1 year, yeah.
But also at the same time, like, how much longer does Keselowski have left in the Cup Series as an active driver? I'm not saying an owner, but as a driver, because he took a big risk going from Team Penske to going to RFK Racing and changing that organization around. Now, Buescher's gotten significantly better. I think Buescher's benefited more from that than Keselowski has when you look at things.
Yeah, well, and we've talked about
which is the point, though.
Yeah, and we talked about it last week. His move over there was to make a long-term play to stay in the sport and to improve, to have his mark on an organization, and it's happening with Buescher, and surprisingly to me, it's happening this quick with Ryan Preece. I wasn't sure about that decision given the number of young drivers, the number of prospects, people without rides, and Preece was able to stick. At this point now in the standings, guys, Brad Keselowski is 30th in points. He is only 3 points ahead of Ty Gibbs now. He has only 16 stage points the entire season, 0 top 10s. That's tough. That is tough sledding. And now we're getting into the stretch where the season's really going to accelerate. We're going to start – it's going to be June before we know it. And it's going to be all playoff talk and mid-season tournament and all this stuff. And that is a big hole to dig out of. 157 points out of the regular season points lead, which, I mean, at this point, you're not talking about the regular season points. But you think about it, he got about 3 races worth of points behind the leader in the standings, William Byron. I believe it's still William Byron. Let me make sure that's the case. Dan, at this point, can you remember a race season where, and I know it was different times where you didn't have 30 drivers that could all be on top of each other in points, but do you remember a particular race season where you and the number 9 team had just absolutely this, awful start to the year, and you were so buried in points of what that did to your mentality?
Yeah, I can remember many seasons that way where you started off that way because it wasn't always easy in the beginning. And you thought after the 85 season that you could actually, you thought you were over that hump and things couldn't happen. And there couldn't be nothing further from the truth than the fact that you get secure in the ability of you being able to pull out wins or run really good at certain racetracks. And the thing you got to focus on right here, it is one race, but it's not just one race, because when you read off all the stats and where they're at, you've got to understand that there's somewhere, if you keep running like this, you're going to have a win to get yourself solidly into the playoffs at the end of the year. So can they turn it around? Oh, yeah, they can turn it around, because these cars, being as they are, all it'll take is one race where it's so unpredictable now, at especially 3 racetracks, Atlanta, Daytona, Talladega. Those racetracks are very unpredictable.
They really
are. The cookie cutter tracks, a little bit more predictable, because you can pretty much look back on stats and see who ran good there or who had consistently good finishes. But their morale right now has got to be one to where that they're going to have to focus on a couple of races coming up that they know that they have their best chances to pull off a win. And I think that's what I'd be focused on, because I'm so deep in the points right now that I need a win.
Yeah. Well, and that's the mentality is going to have to switch at some point. Brad Keselowski get 30th in points. Ty Gibbs 31st. I think Ty Gibbs is more likely to win before Brad Keselowski does next, not because the ability of the driver. I haven't seen the ability of Brad Keselowski necessarily fall off. It just seems like they've missed it on speed. Now, he's so far behind his teammates sometimes I do wonder about it. The last 2 weeks, I've been shocked at how far off they've been. I mean, Brad Keselowski has won before at Martinsville a couple of times, I think. And he also ran really well in the Homestead race last year. Why in the world was he barely top 30 in both of these? Ty Gibbs, meanwhile, it seems like they have more speed, and maybe they're starting to turn the corner there. Other drivers toward the back, Noah Gragson, he's had some bad luck for sure, including back on Sunday, 32nd in points, 33rd in points, Riley Herbst. I don't know that I'm 100% surprised about that. A rookie, and he was never a standout in the Xfinity Series. Shane Van Gisbergen in 34th. And you take a new driver to Cup, not a new driver overall, a supremely talented but new driver to Cup with a team at Trackhouse that has regressed back to average, and throw in some bad luck. Your 34th, Cole Custer, 35th in points, Cody Ware, 37th in the standings there. So they're getting into most-win territory. Just ahead of all them, Eric Jones fell 6 spots in the standings after Sunday's race to 29th. Part of that didn't run great on Sunday. He had probably the most boneheaded move of Sunday's race. If it wasn't Chris Buescher, it was Eric Jones coming from 2 car links back to plow through A.J. Allmendinger for some retaliation there. Something that might have gotten him in more trouble and more controversy if it wasn't for Sammy Smith and his compadres in the Xfinity race the day before. But then maybe he knocked some weight out of that car because that car was too light post-race. And I don't know by how much, but they were disqualified. So another tough result there for Legacy Motor Club and Eric Jones. 29th in the standings, disqualified from Sunday's race. So that kind of wraps it for Sunday. It was really a very straightforward race in many respects. The one driver who kind of ran up in the front but ended up in the back, Josh Berry, led 40 laps. He got some pit strategy, got out front. But both he and Austin Cindric ran into some battery issues. Now, there's a great podcast that basically there are 2 post-race shows now, besides what you consider on Sirius and whatever's on the broadcast. There's the Teardown that's a couple of hours after each race on Sundays. And there's now NASCAR's moved their Inside the Race podcast to YouTube Live, basically, on Sundays about 30 minutes after the broadcast. Steve Letarte has on Todd Gordon and Dylan Welch and different people. Jeff Burton was his main focus this week. And they get on to break down the race. And they talked about with the battery stuff, there's ways you can run the batteries and things and weight and stuff you can move around that can make the batteries more vulnerable in these cars. And Penske, they think, was probably trying to mess with something, Penske and the Wood brothers, that gave them an advantage somewhere else that also hurt the life of the battery because they actually ran out of batteries. That's why Austin Cindric had to retire from the race. They ran out of batteries. They couldn't happen to change them. So I know that's not a very technical response, but something to keep an eye on. These teams will go for an advantage any way they can get them. So we've looked at the points. We looked at Sunday's race. Shall we, boys? Dare we go? Dare we go? Well, let's flip a coin.
We dare. We dare.
Do we go to Saturday's race or do we go to Legacy Motor Club suing Rick Ware?
Let's hold it off for a teaser. We got to tease the audience.
Okay, which one are we teasing them, huh? I'm spinning the wheel. Where are we landing? Well,
let's do Xfinity first.
There we go. Spinning the wheel. It lands on. Devin called it. We're going to Xfinity. Okay. All right. So, look, by the time you listen to this, and we're recording a day late again this week, all right? So I'm sorry about that. But by the time you're hearing it, you've heard every hot take, every up, down, sideways, and a lot of people were sideways about Saturday's Xfinity race. I think 40% of the laps, Devin, you said, were run under caution. They set a record for cautions in the Xfinity race in Martinsville. The Xfinity Series used to not run at Martinsville, by the way. Maybe there was a reason. Don't count me among the people that want them to leave there, by the way. I'm just saying that they used to not run there. And the part that I maybe am most disappointed about, guys, is that Sammy Smith's bulldoze run over Taylor Gray to try and take the race win and not even get the race win, by the way, was the one that got all the press. But really what you saw from Jump Street in that race were people not attempting to pass each other. And they were doing so in cars that are easier to pass with than the Cup Series Goliaths that stick to the racetrack. All right, so I'm not trying to be disrespectful to you, Devin, but I got to go to a guy that helped manage driver behavior, among any other things, when he was the president of Gresham Motorsports Park, and a guy who's seen it for a couple generations here, Dan Elliott. Are people a prisoner of the moment here about how outraged they are in the Xfinity Series? Are people a prisoner of the moment? Sammy Smith got docked 50 points, $25,000 for that one move at the end of the race. But Sam Mayer didn't get docked for plowing over the people he plowed over. Austin Hill ran over his teammate and two other cars before they got to his teammate to take one spot because he was ticked off. Christian Eckes ran over folks. A bunch of them did, Dan.
You ever been on the interstate running out a pack of cars and the state patrol, whatever state it is, singles you out as the recipient, and he tells you it's kind of like going fishing, you can't catch them all, but
That's true.
you're the recipient. You're the recipient that time. This kind of like it is, but you got to remember one thing: it is a short track, and passions and tempers are going to flare because everyone is trying to get themselves better their position, better their opportunity, and get advanced to where that you can be up close to the front of the field, especially if you've got, Doug, a good car. You know's a good car, and you just can't weave your way through the traffic to get an opportunity to stretch it out and go run. And I think the passion runs high, but it is a short track, and we saw it at Gresham. It is a short track, and it seems like that week after week on these short tracks that you're like magnets that attract, and it seems like the same drivers get together on these same opportunities every chance they get. But it gets settled out, and look, I guess NASCAR was, and they succeeded in one thing. They definitely sent a message.
Well, they did. They sent a message similar, maybe different impact, but similar in a way to what they sent to Austin Cindric for the intentional wreck of Ty Dillon at COTA. Similar message to the Austin Dillon situation, although he lost playoff eligibility, which was millions of dollars out of Richard Childress's pocket, or a couple million maybe, going from 16th in points to 30-something in points. So I still wonder if drivers know what the message is, guys, because it happened all day through the whole field and only one person going for the win. And I mean, look, Sammy Smith moved Taylor Gray a few laps earlier, 2 restarts before, because they restarted every 5 seconds in that race, okay? But he moved him. That was fine. And then Taylor Gray moved him right back. And then Sammy Smith, after Taylor Gray cleared him cleanly on the final restart, 2 car lengths ahead, Sammy Smith just decided, turn 3 and 4, I'm using Taylor Gray for brakes. And that was and not only did he not win the race, Austin Dillon at least won Richmond last year. Oh, I know he got the playoffs taken away, but he kept the win and he crossed the finish line first. Sammy Smith wrecked himself, wrecked Taylor Gray, wrecked Justin Allgaier, wrecked Brandon Jones, and however many Jeb Burton and however many people behind him. And then Austin Hill, and congratulations to him, squeaks through from 5th place to 1st and gets the win. So that's Dan's perspective there. Hey, I mean, it's we've got to remember it is a short track, but obviously things get out of control. Devin, on your side, you came into this sport in a different time, all right? I mean, and I know you didn't get to watch Saturday, but just in looking at highlights and seeing reactions, I mean, where do you think we should land on this thing?
I think it's tough because some NASCAR fans want the chaos and some don't. And I think 40% might be overdoing it. You really have to look at the percentages of that.
That 40% of laps run under
race,
caution, you mean?
And the average, yeah. And the average green flag run was 10 laps. So you're having a 10-lap shootout essentially at Martinsville. So you had a gazillion stages essentially. Just most of them didn't go for points.
Yeah.
But I think it's tough. Sometimes people do want the chaos, and sometimes it's too much. And I think it looks like the issue at Martinsville is it was just too much chaos. And you kind of wonder. We have so many young drivers in the Xfinity Series, and compared to what used to happen, I wonder if the absence of Cup drivers in the lower series is really starting to take its toll. Look at ARCA, right? Look at how ARCA is nowadays, where ARCA races are kind of somewhat difficult to go through, but you don't have a lot of the veteran drivers that are going down to the ARCA Menard Series, but also now you don't have them going down to the Trucker Xfinity Series.
They didn't really go down to ARCA a lot, though. To be fair, you might see an Xfinity or truck driver go down to ARCA, but you don't see Cup drivers taking a cup of coffee in the ARCA Series. That's never been a thing.
But you see, though, like going, especially now with the Truck and Xfinity Series, the big absence. I know people don't want to see Kyle Busch or Denny Hamlin win win a gazillion Xfinity or truck races, but I think maybe the absence of these veteran drivers is really hurting it to the point where these drivers graduate from ARCA, they're still kind of in that weird, funky group where they're surrounded by the same peers in a way. Each series being different,
Yeah.
but still that young driver mentality. A lot of those mistakes still come out in those lower series.
Devin,
We got a
you're
lot
in
of
a
that on
young
Saturday.
you're in a young demographic. Do you think that you which way do you want to see these short track races as a Martinsville or a Bristol or something like this or a Wilkesboro? Do you think that your demographic would which way do you want to see it? Do you want it to run clean and green? Do you want to see some of this? Does it matter to you? I know I've got my opinion after watching the races at Gresham, but what do you think your demographic would love to see?
I think you got to have some of the chaos there. Maybe not to the degree that it was at Martinsville on Saturday, where 40% of the race was run under caution. But I think you want to have some of that chaos. Now, green flag action could be good too. I mean, look at Coda from a few weeks ago; that was really good. But I
But
think
it's
you got to have some of that
two
chaos
different
because a lot of
racetracks,
say that again.
two different racetracks.
Yeah, it is, and I mean, you want to see some of the tire wear off. I think we saw a little bit of that on Sunday from the Cup Series race too. But I think you want a mix of wear and tear on the cars, like tire fall off, and then a little bit of the chaos, but not to that degree.
Well, it's some you can't NASCAR isn't going to have a penalty flag or an elixir to have the right amount, Goldilocks amount of
No,
chaos. What
no.
you need to do is prevent or disincentivize the non-skilled haymakers.
Okay, Doug, Devin, let me go back to what I think based on what I saw at Gresham. And this is where I look at the crew chiefs as being they're essentially to me the coaches. And the coaches need to keep their players reined in, so to speak. And I feel like, given the circumstances of this being a short track like it is, you're not going to have this all the time. Am I putting you to sleep, Doug?
No, I'm listening to you. I'm listening to you. Sorry.
I'm joking. But anyway, I look at the crew chiefs to be the ones that can head off some of this stuff with the drivers. I
Interesting.
really do. And if the driver does not want to listen, that's what team meetings are for. Is okay, internally you can have your own program of being able to control your players, so to speak. So I look at the crew chiefs as the one, and I saw this not only in the short track stuff at Gresham, but through the early career of NASCAR and how drivers were a little bit. It wasn't that they were rebels, but let's just say it came down to a particular race, and they got really aggressive, and you saw where it was going before it even happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to me, that's where the crew chief needs to come in and calm the drivers down, get them under control to where that after the race is over, you can go back through the race back at the team headquarters and see what the crew chief was talking about, and get the driver to sit in and listen to what the crew chief was trying to do, and really get in his head and help him mature as a really good driver.
Yeah.
I think you make a really good point there because you got to think about it. It's like other sports too. Sure, the league or the sanctioning body can throw down a penalty, but it should be up to the internal teams. As you said, a crew chief, in essence, is like a head coach of a stick and ball sport, for instance. Maybe there needs to be more internal penalties that are thrown out
Well,
at these drivers.
so that brings an interesting tension here because a lot of people are saying, look, NASCAR can't just let the haymakers, this obvious stuff, just go unchecked, and they probably shouldn't be waiting till 2 days later to give a 50-point penalty to Sammy Smith. It needs to be black flags and tail ends and all that stuff in the moment. But then it's like, well, wait a second, you're putting it on NASCAR, that you're leaving NASCAR with a judgment call. Oh, we don't like those. Maybe the teams just need to reel in their driver behavior. So here we go. Here's the tension.
Yeah.
Brad Keselowski, co-owner of RFK, all right. And his opinion still matters, even though he's 30th in points. He's seen a lot, and he has been one of those drivers before. All right. Remember how his career started. Okay. Here's what he wrote on X. My 2 cents. The solution needs to come from the car owners and not NASCAR. Until the car
Yeah.
owners are willing to part their drivers for this getting out of control, very little will change. I get that they're all scared to park a funded driver out of fear they will lose the money to continue operations. However, at some point, that's the risk you have to take to get this right. I believe if all teams do it together, it would work. So this would mean, guys, that potentially 5 drivers would be sitting out Darlington. Okay, I just want to point that out for the Xfinity race because there were several that went way over the line. Chris Gabehart, Director of Competition, Joe Gibbs Racing, former crew chief. Here's what he said. I have immense respect for Keselowski, but I just don't get this. And what other sport, now this is great. Think of, Devin, what you were just watching basketball last weekend. In what other sport does the team penalize a player for a flagrant foul? Answer, no other sport. This is simply a flagrant foul. The refs have to be willing to blow the whistle. That being NASCAR, of course. Even if they get a call wrong every now and then, that over time is when it will stop.
Here's
2 great points I just want to point out. Go ahead, Devin.
I do have a counterpoint. It does happen in professional sports. In the NFL, there's have been instances where the coaches will sit out a player on purpose for a game. Oh, they didn't go to this practice. Oh, they did something I didn't like what they did in that last game.
Or if they do something that's just unclassy, so to speak. They'll be like, you're sitting out this one. That's for sure, but it doesn't happen much, not compared to the yellow flags going on the field, for personal foul or face mask or whatever, right? The team, that's not up to the teams. The teams in the end are just, that's how we're minded. We are hive-minded people. We're going to side with our people. Dale Earnhardt Jr., and I've only listened to part of what he said, but he said he was incensed about how Saturday went. He left the track with a bad taste in his mouth. He said that's the most disturbed. I want to make sure I get it right. The most disappointed. That's the word. The most disappointed he's been leaving a racetrack. Not the angriest or the worst he's felt, because losing certain races he's felt worse, or certainly losing his father after the race is the most sad or angry he's felt. But he says the most disappointed he's left after a race. And he was disappointed with his own driver, of course, and Sammy Smith, but he was disappointed at the whole deal. And he called Sammy on Sunday and he said a couple of things, and I'm paraphrasing here. But he told him that no matter, he goes, you are fighting the battle already with fans of being silver spoon, daddy's money, all this kind of stuff. And then you go do that. He goes, Sammy, you have to work harder than other people to gain their respect already. And then you did that. All right. And Sammy was disappointed in himself. And he said afterwards, it's not what I want to do, but it would have gotten done back to me. And of course, he didn't do himself any favors with that, because Taylor Gray literally moved him in a clean bump and run right before that. So, I mean, what are you talking about? Getting upset about a middle finger is not an excuse to wreck the half of the top 10 there coming to the checkered flag.
Yeah, but Doug, as an owner or a crew chief, I've been to enough races, and these people have been to races all of their lives.
Yeah.
And Doug, you can pretty much, for the most part, you might not see it in the very, very beginning, but by the radio communications, what your driver sounds like, his mood, his mentality, him inside out. And for them not to get on the radio and try to calm him down and get a different perspective of what we're here for and what we're trying to do, I honestly feel like that they are putting the blame somewhere to where that they need to take some sense of ownership of some of this stuff going on. As owners, as crew chiefs, they need to be responsible in some portion here for what's going on. Yes, I agree. There are instances, but as we said, this is a short track. There aren't many tracks. Yes, you run in packs more than you did before, but also, too, as an owner, as a crew chief, it is going to be now your responsibility to go back and put this car back together, however much money you're going to spend and time you're going to spend on doing this. I feel like the gains of coming in there from each one of the teams and doing this collectively would be a whole lot easier than NASCAR, because we've got a professional series, a professional sport that we are operating on different races like we've never raced before, and this is our first rodeo.
That's what it seems like whenever we have a big issue here. Is it feels like
that's
it
That's
feels
it.
like
We've
we're doing
lost
this the first time.
perspective.
And granted, Saturday was an aberration compared to normal, but it's not the first time we've had.
Not the first
Yeah.
time. It
So,
won't be the last time.
but the drivers are racing it like it's the first time they've ever been hit before. All right, and that's the issue. So to go back to radio communication, I was listening to the 8 radio. I was back home in time to see those last 3 restarts. I couldn't believe it. All right, I could not believe that I actually got to see any of that race. All right, they at some point when there was sheet metal traded, they had some yellow flags to think about it, and they definitely were. All right, stay cool here. We'll get them back. That kind of thing. That was happening. All right, because Taylor Gray did not move Sammy Smith out of the way during that last 2-lap sequence. So Sammy Smith moved Taylor Gray like 2 restarts before. Taylor Gray moved it back on the second to last restart. Taylor Gray cleared Sammy Smith cleanly on the final restart and was 2 car lengths ahead. Going into the last set of turns, they didn't assume, I don't think, the crew chief or the spotter on the 8 car assume, well, my driver's all ticked off. He's going to, be smart here. Be smart here. It's the last set of turns. You're 2 car lengths behind. There wasn't a retaliation to be paid. The score was even. So how do you calm someone down? You're talking a matter of 1 second or two. I still don't. I've watched that restart 4 times. I still don't even know how Sammy Smith from the outside lane actually got in position to actually ram Taylor Gray. It was weird, right? It was he cleared Justin Allgaier or cleared Brandy Jones that dove in and did it. It was strange. So I don't think that they saw it coming. I didn't see it coming for sure. Now, I want to tell you, Junior Motorsports did a great job. I was watching the highlights on YouTube of calming down Carson Kvapil. There was a point where Carson Kvapil got just cleaned out, but it stayed green. He didn't spin out. And they said, all right. And they said literally to this young driver who has run so fast this year and doesn't have the finishes to show for it, they said, don't see red here. Keep going ahead. You'll get him back. Like, get him back, get the spot back, I mean. And Carson Kvapil did get wrecked a couple of times in that race, but he didn't, that I saw anyway, he didn't ever cause one. And I think that says a lot about his composure. Connor Zilisch guy, who, by the way, Zilisch led 100 laps in this race, won the first 2 stages, and no one's talked about him. He did a great job for the front of that field. He got crashed about 3 times, and I don't know that any of those were his fault. Harrison Burton got crashed 3 times, and I think 2 of those weren't his fault, So there's just a lot of people that probably needed to be calmed down. And I think from the flip side of the 8 team, the 1 team, so Sammy Smith versus Carson Kvapil, Kvapil showed a lot more poise and maturity, and he's been in the series. This is his rookie year. So now, do we think at all that NASCAR should start having black flags for certain amounts of contact? I mean, because I'm torn on this. I want drivers to handle it, but they're also not allowed to fight. We saw that after the race. I mean, where do we stand? Devin, do you think there should be, because, I mean, Dale Jr., a lot of the drivers think that this needs to be, Denny Hamlin said it, a lot of the drivers think that NASCAR has to throw basically what Chris Gabehart called a flagrant foul.
I think some of these are. I think it's something that NASCAR probably should do, is throw the black flag more often. We don't see it.
Yeah.
We really don't see too many drivers getting the black flag, but maybe in this instance, there probably needs to be the black flag thrown maybe just a little bit more. But, it all comes down to a judgment call at the end of the day. Is every wreck or every caution that we get that involves contact with other drivers, is that going to warrant a black flag every time? I think it's just
probably not every time. No, I mean, sometimes you see 2 people go for the same spot, and it's just one of those things, right? Even the instance where Chris Buescher cleared himself in front of Carson Kvapil, I think it was just a mistake, and he turned out. But if Chris Buescher, he'd already spun out. If he'd gotten sent to the back for that, who cares? He'd already spun out. I mean, it's a way to disincentivize whatever was happening Saturday. Dan, you said the team should handle it, but should there be more done from the tower before we move from the subject?
I think it's going to be a 2-part solution here, and I feel like that there are instances to where that the team needs to be the reprimand, and there are going to be times where NASCAR needs to take the upper hand, do the reprimand. But I think it needs to come right then and there. I think that not every instance deserves a black flag. But do you remember David Hoots, who used to
Oh yeah,
call races for NASCAR?
he does a
Do
smart
you remember
modified
what he
tour. I just
used to
learned now,
say
by the way.
during the races to the crew chiefs as this stuff progressed? He would come on the radio, give and take, boys, give and take.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. In other words, use your head. This is one race. This is one of 36, and keep you cool and just calm down and let's do what we're here for.
right. And I think you're absolutely right. That makes me think, could the crew chiefs and the spotters had done more, the people that are in the driver's ear, could they have done more to get in their driver's ears and say, look, man, hey, you're probably not going to park Sammy Smith, who brings the pilot sponsorship. You're probably not parking Austin Hill and Bennett. You're not parking Audubell and Sam Mayer.
But if they deserve to be parked, that's
But
another deal. If they deserve to be parked, and I'm not saying parking, let's do the black flag and put them in the back of the field.
yeah, I mean, when I said park, I meant the team. It said instead of parking them, because the extreme was Brad Keselowski saying, hey, if your driver does something, take him out of the car for a week, let him think about it. That's probably not going to happen. There's playoffs, there's all this kind of stuff. But if they get in their ear like, hey, man, or really like chew them out after the race or whatever it is, maybe there's some humility that will show up here, because what we need is respect. And honestly, and I hate to say it, because, you want them to inject vinegar in their veins or whatever. You want to see respect and humility, though. These are Bozy Tatarevich was on Actions Detrimental with Denny Hamlin. He's a guy that's a crew member in IMSA and does a really good job breaking down the mechanics of these race cars and knows a lot about the pit crews and all this stuff. He's just a great follow on X. And Bozy said that a body on an Xfinity Series car is $10,000, and the drivers were treating those bodies like paper bags. All right. And there's a disconnect there. I know in the end, you have to treat your race car like it's your weapon and you're going to war. But at the same point, what you saw on that last lap, especially, but all day Saturday, was just a real mess. So we do agree that the teams and NASCAR could do more. And I think NASCAR is getting pushed into that box to start doing more. And I'm interested to see what it is. I think finding and penalizing just one driver for the sins of everybody else is probably not the answer. Sammy Smith is not the messiah of the Xfinity Series, okay?
No.
The other thing, too, by the way, is, and this got underreported, the only person I heard say this was Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic and on the Teardown podcast. Jordan Bianchi, a lot of people criticized that Taylor Gray wasn't allowed to go beat Sammy Smith's butt, because but Jordan Bianchi reported that he actually confronted him in the infield care center, not on TV, like a lot more hardcore. And it began inside. And Taylor Gray and Jeb Burton was incensed at Daniel Dye after the race, by the way, for how he got driven by Daniel Dye. They both got fined $5,000 for confronting the drivers inside the care center. All right, what we saw was outside. So they NASCAR also disincentivizing the fighting, I guess, near the sterile instruments. Okay, I don't know. But just an interesting little fold out of that, wherever that's supposed to go. I guess we don't want to fight.
Maybe it was because the sharp instruments were close at hand.
I'm telling you, yeah. But a lot of people think that, hey, let these drivers get punched one time and then they'll understand. Ty Gibbs got punched by Sam Mayer. Wasn't it Ty Gibbs that punched Sam Mayer 3 years ago? Did that stop Ty Gibbs from running over anybody? I don't think it did. I don't know that we're to the point. If somebody fights you, you just think, well, I got to go get him back. I don't know that fighting disincentivizes the wrecking anymore. So that being said, let's move on to something else juicy. Litigation, and not an antitrust suit. No. This one came, if some of these stories come out of left field, and I'm like, where in the world, who's doing what? This one to me comes out of the grandstands. All right. We found out, story started circulating Tuesday evening around dinner time, that Legacy Motor Club is suing Rick Ware Racing because they had come into an agreement to purchase Rick Ware's charter, one of their two charters. Now, remember, Rick Ware owns the charter that Ryan Preece is driving and RFK is leasing from them. Rick Ware also owns the charter that's the full-time entry for Cody Ware, car number 51. Legacy Motor Club began a conversation with Rick Ware Racing in January, according to the lawsuit documents. They signed an agreement in the first week of March that Rick Ware was going to sell a charter to LMC. Rick Ware then decided not to execute that agreement, even though they'd already signed it. Legacy Motor Club has been trying to talk them into, hey, we had an agreement here, and they're not reneging, so now they're taking them to court. All right. Now, we don't know. Look, if you sign something, to me, it's black and white. It's signed. The thing that's juicy to me is now that there's a lawsuit, all right, it's the fact that what Legacy Motor Club's trying to get a third charter, what Rick Ware's trying to hit the eject button. And what I say is, guys, is this the start of silly season? Devin, let's just assume that this goes on Legacy Motor Club's side. Suddenly you have one less Ford team. You know, does that mean that RFK loses a charter, or does that mean that Rick Ware Racing goes out of business, or both, or what? I don't know. And also, which lucky driver gets chosen to go to Legacy Motor Club next year, Devin? Well, I mean, we got a lot to think about here.
Yeah, there certainly is a lot to think about with Rick Ware Racing potentially selling a charter here. But my biggest takeaway and my first thought is why I don't understand why Legacy Motor Club is trying to expand. And I'm citing this off the performance that we've seen from this team.
Yes.
I mean, John Hunter Nemechek right now is having a decent year, 17th in the points right now. But, you know, look at how Jimmy Johnson's running in that equipment when he does run. Or look at Eric Jones, sub 25 in the points. So I think it's really tough. If you're Legacy Motor Club, I don't know why the focus needs to be on expanding the team when the focus, I think, needs to be on improving performance within. Because the results just simply really aren't out there for Legacy Motor Club. And it just doesn't, I just feel like it doesn't make any sense for them to expand when kind of right now they have one driver that's somewhat decent right now, but outside of that, there's just not much going for them. And I feel like this is just more trouble for them to get involved in, now entering a lawsuit with Rick Ware Racing rather than just acquiring a charter. So they're in a whole bunch of water now with them.
It seems really odd that now would be the time to expand. But Dan, I don't know if you feel the same way or not, but Dan, we know how hard these charters are to come by. And basically what Legacy Motor Club says is they learned in January that Rick Ware was interested in offloading a charter. And they even put in the lawsuit language that Rick Ware had stated that they were not making money at the Cup level. They were barely getting by, even though they just signed Arby's as a sponsor and have said otherwise publicly. Okay, they're barely getting by, and now they're trying to offload a charter. Dan, is this an issue of it's more beneficial for teams to have a charter regardless of where they won because of? And I missed you the last few weeks. Show me the money. Is this what this is about?
Money. I think you need to go back and regroup on the saying. It's not silly season anymore. It's suing season, and it's suing season, and that started again. And I think it is on the outside looking in. I would have to say there's money involved here somewhere, and I think the value of the charters. I think it's going to come down to the charters are going to increase in value more than inflation has taken our money in the past 6 months to a year.
Yeah. It just Devin's point is so practical. And it's what I thought too is, okay, we're really trying to expand. Like you're barely doing what you need to do here. But in the end, the margin you could run on just owning a charter.
Owning a charter. There you go.
It's big time. And there's so few and far between. And maybe the charter market has softened a little bit because some teams have wanted charters have gotten them now. But you also know that Childress seems to want to expand. Mm-hmm. Okay. Dale Jr. has expressed interest in coming to Cup. And if he comes to Cup, I don't think it's going to be a one charter situation. I think it's really the optimal number is 2. And Brad Keselowski and Denny Hamlin both said the optimal number is really 3. Now, more than 3 diminishing return.
I'd say 3 is optimal number, and then 4 can get you in the situation.
Well, and you can't have 4 now unless you're grandfathered in like Gibbs and Hendricks. So
I know, but if I could, I would have 4 because then I could lease I would have a team that would be have team will travel, and I would have a team to where that if you had a race coming up that somebody wanted to be in and was willing to pay the money. There you are. You got to ride.
Well, and that's That's the state of it. It's really interesting though to see what this unfolds, and I just think too, if I'm a young Toyota driver, let's just assume that this is another Toyota team, and they're a key partner ish, but they're not a key partner. It's weird. I mean, and you know that the 2311 Racing's pretty well locked in. You know that Denny Hamlin it may one point will retire for Joe Gibbs Racing soon, but it doesn't seem like he's close to doing it. And your top choice, if you're a Toyota driver in the pipeline, I'm thinking Taylor Gray. All right. I'm thinking Corey Heim, who is a 2311 development driver. Those guys, are they going, oh, wait, I get to drive the third legacy car? Okay.
Yeah.
Like, do I want to do that? I don't know. I mean, or maybe do I want to stay here and win some more races in trucks and Xfinity? And honestly, the answer is I want to go cup racing probably, but look at John Hunter Nemechek, tore it up, and now he's invisible at cup. Once again,
What is it
And
they
another
say?
thing,
Your 15 seconds of fame.
15 seconds of fame. There you go. Yeah, Devin.
Yep.
and another thing too with Legacy Motor Club, their biggest sponsor being Dollar Tree and Family Dollar. We talked about it last week. Dollar Tree wanting to sell off the Family Dollar part of the
Yep.
company. So your biggest sponsor, I mean, you wouldn't sell off half of your company if you weren't making money.
Right. And it could be
So
that the Family Dollar stores are the ones underperforming, and that's why they're trying to offload it. But again, that means primary sponsorship could have less viability. Yeah, that the whole thing. That's a great point. All right, we'll keep an eye on that. I'd love to hear what our RWR, Rick Ware Racing's response is to that. On the better side of sponsorship and things of such, whatever that means. But Prime Video is going to be sponsoring and have an appearance on Kyle Larson's cars for both the Coca-Cola 600 and the Indy 500 as he runs the double again with both Hendrick Motorsports and McLaren Racing. They are also going to produce a full-length documentary about the double too. I think that's really interesting, and that's something I would definitely watch, and hopefully it's prominent on Prime Video when people log in there to see Kyle Larson. So that's two Hendrick affiliated cars. Chase Elliott's going to have some Prime Video sponsorship later this season in the middle of the year for a multi-year deal. We also saw that the ZMAX Cars Tour that's co-owned by Dale Jr. and Justin Marks, Kevin Harvick, and Jeff Burton, they are running at North Wilkesboro Speedway, but instead of running Wednesday night, their late model stock division is going to run after Cup qualifying for that All-Star race weekend on FS1, and it's going to have Kevin Harvick and Dale Jr. in the booth. So the race will still be on Flow Racing like they normally are, but it'll also be on FS1 on a Friday night. That's a big opportunity. I don't
yeah,
know. I mean, I don't know how many people will watch it or not, but that's a big deal for those drivers, Devin.
yeah, and normally that's the past 2 years at North Wilkesboro. That's been kind of like I mean, you had cup practice and truck practice that day, and I think they moved the pit crew challenge last year, but like Friday night, like the track stuff would end at like 6 o'clock. So that's going to make Friday a little bit more interesting at Wilkesboro.
It certainly will. I love that. And before we get going here, Dan, tell me which nose we're seeing behind you there. We see your great clothes rack, but then we see a car nose there with the number 9 on it. Which one is that?
This is actually supposed to be the 212 nose.
Explain.
The car that ran 212 at Talladega in '87, it got
the 212 mile per hour nose. It was supposed to be on that car.
The
Okay.
212. That's supposed to be the 212 nose. That was what it was sold as to be, and I've got the paperwork on it. But it's supposed to be the 212 nose, and that car got some modifications because it ran again in '88, and '88 saw a good many changes, and one of the changes obviously was restrictor plate, and then another one of the changes was door templates, and there were things that had to be changed on the car. So this was ongoing as the rules changed, and it doesn't mean much unless you're behind the scenes, and then you have changes to the car that require more than just some cosmetic work. It's a little bit more detailed.
Yeah. But I think
But
that's really cool to see it, though. Yeah.
Yep. It is a unique piece, that's for sure. And I've got two more other pieces off of the 212 car that qualified at Talladega, and those speeds, unless something drastically changes in the future, you'll not see that anymore. So,
I'd
but
love
it's
to
a
see
part of
those speeds
history.
again. I want you to
Yeah,
always
part
have
of
the record,
history.
but I would love to see him going 210 at those tracks again, even though, even though there's a lot of danger involved. That's
Yeah, the remarkable part to me wasn't the 212 809 at Talladega, was the 210 at Daytona.
yeah.
There was, to me, was the remarkable qualifying speed, was 210 at Daytona.
Yeah, because of the handling, right, and just a little bit tighter corner.
Absolutely. And the tunnel turn, the little dip in the tunnel turn
Yeah.
that took out so many drivers, and to me, I think is beginning to show itself. I may be wrong,
No, you're right.
but
I
to
know what you
me,
mean.
I believe it's beginning to show itself now. That dip is coming back in the track, I feel, and the effects of that now that you're more aero, the package is more aero dependent, is going to show up a lot quicker than it did in my years of
Yeah.
coming through NASCAR.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is a great point. And it was turn 4, right? Isn't that the tunnel turn?
Yep,
Yeah,
tunnel
they were
turn
crashing there
four.
like crazy all weekend at Speed Weeks. Yeah.
Yep,
Hey,
yep.
I don't want to get off of the subject here. We're going to look at the entry list real quick for Darlington, particularly Xfinity, because they always have some changes. But I don't want to forget the truck race Friday, because we saw, actually, we didn't see people just wrecking left and right the whole time, and it's so frustrated. But we actually saw, Caden Honeycutt wrecked Ty Majeski out of the lead. Ty Majeski came, got it back, and then, and they wrecked even more when that happened, right? I think someone got into Majeski on that one. And so they ended up not getting the finishes they wanted either, and they were up front at the end of the race. Caden Honeycutt was going for his first ever win for Nice Motorsports, and they both ended up finishing back. And I want to tell you, when Caden Honeycutt got wrecked, spun around, he said, "I guess that's what I get for wrecking the 11 truck." All right. He actually spun the 11 of Corey Heim out of the lead and got into Ty Majeski a little bit. Majeski got into Honeycutt, though. So you see, he got his just desserts, and honestly, his team was calming him down, and I felt like they handled it pretty well despite what the driving showed. Up front, it was Daniel Hemrick, though, getting his second ever victory in however many couple hundred NASCAR starts across the top 3 series, driving the McAnally Hilgeman number 19 race truck. And that truck won with Christian Eckes in Martinsville back in the fall, when Eckes used the chrome horn on Taylor Gray, by the way. The second went to Tyler Ankrum. Jake Garcia out of Monroe, Georgia. He's had a tough go this last year and a half. He ended up finishing third. Fellow Georgian Chandler Smith was fourth, and Ben Rhodes ended up fifth. Corey Heim got spun out of the lead, came from the back all the way back to 6th place. He led 149 at 200 laps that night and drove back to 6th at the end of that. Corey Heim seems like the driver to beat in the truck series. It's Corey Heim versus the field. That's 11 versus the world, too. He's number 11. I would say Corey Heim's 11 versus the world is even more accurate in the truck series than it is for Denny Hamlin in Cup. So, looking real quick to the Xfinity Series. No response. These guys are looking at me. Why are you talking about trucks? I don't watch TV on Friday. What do you know? Okay. So, in the Cup Series, we're going to see Austin Hill in the 33 car this weekend in the Cup Series for Richard Childress Racing, and J.J. Yaley will be in the 44. So 38 teams there. Everybody will make the field. In the Xfinity Series, that's where you always have the spicy entry list. There's all sorts of good stuff there, and they'll be at Darlington too. So we've got the 07. That's for Spire Motorsports. Nick Lights is going to be in that. So they've had Cup drivers running their extra trucks for Spire. Now we get into the pay trucks. Here we go. Nick Lights will be there. Ross I was thinking trucks. That's Xfinity. My bad. Erase. Nick Lights will be in the 07 for SS Greenlight Racing, and he's done that before. I had a brain penalty there. So that's Xfinity Series 07 SS Greenlight Nick Lights. The number 9 will be Ross Chastain for Junior Motorsports, that all-star car. The number 17 that's seen Corey Day, William Byron, Alex Bowman, and Kyle Larson this year will have Chase Elliott this time around. That 17 truck looked like a ping pong ball at Martinsville with Corey Day driving, by the way, a week ago. The 19 car will have Christopher Bell at Darlington in the Xfinity Series. The 32 is back, and they'll have Austin Green. Greg Van Alst will drive Joey Gase's number 35. Mason Massey from Georgia will be in the 45 machine for Alpha Prime Racing. That was driven by Brad Perez a week ago. Dawson Cran will be in the 74. Josh Bilicki returns to the 91 that Mike Snyder had driven the last 2 races there for DGM Racing. So watch out for that. And then let me pull up the schedule real quick for this weekend. I don't have it handy here. I know the Cup race is going to be on FS1 again, but okay. And the Xfinity Series will be on the CW, but let's get the full rundown of everything. Let me just pull that up. Sorry, guys. My internet's being slow. So on Friday, no on-track activity because it's just Cup and Xfinity. Saturday will be a busy day, though. We'll have Xfinity Series practice at 10:05 Eastern and qualifying at 11:10. Then the Cup Series will be right out of the door after that with practice and qualifying at 12:35 and 1:40. The Xfinity sessions will be where? On the CW app. Remember that, CW app. And then Cup Series practice and qualifying, that is on Prime Video, right? So that's kind of strange. It's still weird. It's like not on regular TV. But, hey, it's also 2025, so we got to do it. And then, of course, the Xfinity Series race will be on the CW, which does not stream the race. Just a reminder. I almost forgot this Saturday. I was trying to pull it up on my phone and forgot. They'll be on the CW proper at 3:30 p.m. Now, Sunday's Cup race, let me toggle forward to that. That'll be Sunday afternoon, and it will be at 3 p.m., and that will be on FS1. 400 miles there. The Goodyear 400. Is it good? Do you think, Dan, that Goodyear is happy that Saturday's race was such a crap show that people really didn't talk much about how the soft tires didn't cause a ton of passing Sunday?
Yeah, I think that the most important part of that is that you didn't have the negative from the tires
Right.
that most of this, even though not a lot of changes were made and not a lot were talked about, it was a good day for Goodyear.
Yeah. Great point. It was a good day. It was certainly a better day than what we've seen in the other spring races, but leaves us wanting a little bit more. One limitation, and I've heard Denny Hamlin talking about this and some
But
others.
Doug, you can't leave it to the tires always to create the atmosphere that you need to create to make these races exciting.
I would agree that you can't leave it to only them, but that is the four parts that hit the track. And the one thing that they face, though, and this is what here Denny Hamlin, Dale Jr. talking about this, is these tires are handmade. The race tires are handmade, and to make them softer will require different equipment and more manpower, basically. And it's just there's a point where they just can't do it, at least right now. So, I mean,
okay, so to change this, we need to maybe throw more elements into a race that encompass more than just driver and maybe aero package.
What about treaded tires instead?
Well, treaded tires, that's good if it rains.
No, run treaded tires on the dry. You got to change them every 30 laps.
You're talking about running a softer tire.
No, I'm talking about running the softest compound possible, put treads in it, then it wears out faster.
All right, well, why don't we just run tread all the time? And whether it rains or whether it don't, we still race.
I'm here. I mean, I'm saying if you can't make them softer, put treads in them, because that's the whole strategy in damp conditions, is that you want to make sure not leave your treaded tires on too long, lest the pavement dry, and then you have too much tire wear and can't make lap time.
There are elements you could do to this. Why not run a smaller tire to where that the driver has more control of how hard you can run a car and how much grip the car actually has. And it does put that more back into the driver's hands and becomes more about tire management, so to speak, but also too how much you can push the car on any given lap.
Let's see, less tire. Let's throw in more horsepower and less downforce. Hey,
you could leave the horsepower. You could leave the horsepower alone and take away tire and accomplish the same goal.
I like it. Devin, I think you were about to speak there, and then
from what I've heard, Goodyear is running the tire as soft as they can.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think they've reached the point where they can't make them anymore. So I don't know. Can we just start soaking them then? Let's just get everybody. NASCAR will soak the tires beforehand, and we'll take care of it at the track. That used to be a thing. That used to be a thing.
I think you need to soak the drivers and leave the tires alone.
Some of them wouldn't be 150 pounds soaking wet. Okay. All right.
Right.
Let's get to our final thoughts here, as we have made up for it, boys. We're reaching an hour 20, but we had so much, especially that Xfinity stuff and the driver aggression, and there's just so much to cover this week. And honestly, I'm thankful for the storylines, even if it's a little rough. But Devin, let's come to you first, my brother.
Yeah, so my final thought, give a shout out to the UNG baseball team. They're doing really well, nationally ranked 22nd in the nation right now, and beat number 5 Catawba last week, their first top 5 win since 2022, which I find really hard to believe
Okay.
on that one. I don't recall anybody beating anybody that good that year, but uh, first top 5 win since 2022, maybe first NCAA tournament appearance since 2017, and Tom Cantrell's final year. So things are cooking in Dahlonega.
Okay, things are cooking in Dahlonega. Congrats to the baseball team for they're ranked top 5. You said
No, they're 22 in the coaches poll. There's a
and Division 2.
Division 2 baseball site that has them at 17.
Okay,
So
okay,
they're doing good.
that's a big deal. Catch was it UNGNighthawks.com? What's the
Yeah,
NighthawkSports.com?
Nighthawk Sports Network. Robert D. Clemente and I were on the broadcast yesterday. You know, he hit me with the April Fool's saying that the Jets were Super Bowl favorites, and I don't believe that for 1 minute.
Right, toilet bowl favorites. Yes,
Yeah, a toilet bowl, maybe. I mean, come on, let's be real about this. Who'll give us a better chance at winning games? Aaron Rodgers or Justin Fields? Let's just be honest about it.
the Aaron Rodgers. But anyway, that's
Exactly.
Let's see. Yeah. All right, there you go. So yeah, we didn't even cover April Fools there. Dan, what about you?
I'm thankful we got through Martinsville, and Martinsville
Barely.
did accomplish for NASCAR. NASCAR has to be happy about Martinsville, regardless of any of this stuff that comes out of it, because what have we done now for the past 3 days?
Talked about it.
Talked about it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We've talked about it, and it will be talked about for the rest of this week until you get into, since the first day of Darlington is Saturday. It probably won't be the topic of conversation until you get something out of Darlington to change that, or something changes to change that. So
Yeah.
So they can check that box, that mission accomplished, that Martinsville was probably the most talked about, because F1 or Indy or any of that, did anything happen over the weekend?
Those series were off.
Okay, so hey, that goal has been accomplished.
Yeah, I got to say though, and you can't judge all of NASCAR off of what the second series did. Just like no one knows what Formula 2 did either. Okay, but are we getting talked about for the right reasons? All right, that's the deal. Is if it's only fighting and crashing.
I think all press is good press, whether it's bad or good, whatever. I think you're talking about it, and that accomplishes the goal of what I feel like that's one of the most important things that NASCAR wants, and obviously they want to put themselves in a favorable light all the way across the board. But at the end of the day, it's still what you have talked about and what you want to go back and look at, and it makes you want to go look at the highlights of the race weekend and go back and see what did I miss.
Yeah. That's true. Now, you do want to know what you missed. That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, my final thought is this: 2 things. Number one, welcome back to you, Dan. I know that was a tough surgery you had to have after, the years of having those problems with your neck and back and everything after that pit road crash. And we're
yeah, but the good thing is what the doctor said 9 years ago. I had a vertebrae worked on 9 years ago, and they said the technology, the advancements that will come in the next decade are going to make this so much easier, so much easier to get over, so much easier to get through. And I totally agree with that.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, praise God for that. And we're glad you're back. And I wouldn't have even known anything had happened the way you're handling yourself right now. I hope I didn't give you too big a headache today after all this, that you need to lay down and turn off the lights, all right, after having to sit here with me. And I was late to this just because I had to get my car taken for service, and it took longer to get here than I thought. But my other part of the final thought, I wouldn't know, Dan. Heck, I might not even – no, I'll tell you this right now. I would not know Dan Elliott or Devin Kupka, more than likely, or have a career necessarily in radio, and certainly not a career that I've gotten to be as close to NASCAR as I have without Captain Herb Emery. And as we record, as I mentioned, top of the show, today would have been his 73rd birthday, right? Is that right? Yeah, no, 72nd birthday, excuse me. It would have been his 72nd birthday. He passed away, as many people listening might know. We try to give this tribute very often. He passed away of a heart attack on April the 12th, 10 days after his birthday in 2014. On his actual birthday in 2014, 10 days before his death, the 85 and 400 flyover ramps in the interchange opened there. And he got to be at the grand opening, and he really campaigned to the DOT to have those, was very much in favor of them. And they ended up naming those two bridges the Captain Herb Emery Memorial Bridges. All right.
And I sure don't want to forget a shout out to Karen
Absolutely.
and Captain Herb's wife and his beautiful wife, and they were so good together. I enjoyed when all of us were together and were able to do that in Atlanta and other places. It was such an honor.
Right. It really was. Dan, of course, you got to sit in on the Allen Vigil Ford 120 racing show we
Yep.
did Saturday afternoons for a while there. You had a period of sitting in on that. And that's how we got to know each other. Of course, being on WSB is how I got to know Devin. The connection that Herb had to NASCAR, bringing that show to the racetrack is what, got me close to the sport. And so thank God for that. Thank God for him, and happy birthday, Captain Herb. And Karen is still doing a lot to help a lot of other people and is shining that
Yes.
light, and we're thankful for her too. So thank you for mentioning her, Dan. Thank you to Captain Herb. Thank you, God, for giving us that gift of him. And thank you all.
I just hope Devin will not forget us as he moves on up the corporate ladder here. I just hope Devin does not forget us in his future.
He
here.
won't.
Always got to remember where you start.
That's it.
Remember your roots.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Well, and we're thankful. Y'all know we do this as a passion project here. 5 to Go podcast. I mean, if it ever did start making money, certainly that would be great. And there's only so much you can expect out of that, because there's a zillion podcasts out there. So we thank all of you, especially today being almost an hour and a half. We thank all of you for making the time to listen to us. All right. Be sure, if you heard something you like, if you know people around you that like racing, and maybe want just a little slightly different take, different insight from Dan being on a pit crew, and Devin and me having different generational views and the ways we get up close, send that link over to him. Be sure to subscribe, turn on the notifications. Remember, this is on my YouTube channel. Just look up Doug Turnbull on YouTube or 5 to Go podcast. It'll pop up there. We put basically since episode 300. This is 307. So we've been doing this 2 months now on YouTube, and you can watch the video as well on Spotify. Be sure to like our Facebook page, 5 to Go podcast, as well. For Devin Kupka and Dan Elliott, I'm Doug Turnbull. We're so thankful to you. Again, happy birthday and Godspeed to Captain Herb Emery. And we'll catch you next week after Darlington here on the 5 to Go podcast.
Hey, I might have to do a little bit of Culver's for lunch today.